Hi everyone, good morning. Nice to meet you all. I'm Liran, and I'm happy to talk with you today about market trends in MLOps. I'd like to thank Uli and the MDLI team for setting up this amazing conference. So let's start by a quick introduction. I'm Liran, I'm the CEO of Aporia. Aporia is an ML observability platform, from monitoring to visualizing production ML. In my past, I spent over 20 years in software engineering. I was an investor in a VC firm called Vertex Ventures. Essentially, I really like everything combining both business and technology. And I'm lucky to be the proud owner of the almighty cat Choo-Choo that you see on your screen. So today we're going to talk about some market trends we have all been seeing in the MLOps world. So as I was creating this slide, I was thinking you cannot talk today about trends in machine learning without mentioning generative AI. So the way I see it, generative AI in the past, even just few months, has become pretty crazy. And what it allows all of us to do, it really democratizes the use of AI. So if in the past an organization had to invest in data science team and data science practice in order to gain some very, very advanced NLP or AI capabilities, suddenly it becomes as easy as integrating with an API, right? And we see ChatGPT, Midjourney, and other use cases being adopted across so many industries, whether it's in companies within different departments like marketing and sales using ChatGPT or Midjourney to create their own content or their own ads, from operational and risk and legal. So it's really across all places within the enterprise on one hand. But another, I think, interesting trend that we see is more and more companies that are starting to embrace and utilize ChatGPT and generative AI in general in their product. Notion is a great example for that, right? Like you can just start writing something and straight away from Notion, ask it to continue your sentence or maybe to rephrase your sentence. So it becomes really accessible. In the past, if you think about like even 1 or 2 years ago, it would have taken Notion a lot of time to create something like that. And still, as you can see, like this cute bear on your screen, it should have said MDLI. I tried multiple times, but as you can see, Midjourney was successful in creating a cute teddy bear. However, when it comes to text and creating the MDLI word, it was a bit more challenging, which gets us to the next point regarding generative AI is that with great power comes great responsibility. And we definitely see much more awareness today for that than in the past. As for even simple questions like, is 1000 bigger than 1062, which the answer is obviously no, you can see ChatGPT responding here with a very, very clear answer that yes, 1000 is bigger than 1062. And not only that, it also provides with a very, very detailed explanation and a proof for why it makes sense mathematically. So I think this is just a small example that shows all of us what are the risks or what are the challenges that we still have. Yes, it is an amazing technology. Yes, it does provide us with capabilities that were not available before. However, it's not perfect. It's not, magic. And therefore, we should treat it accordingly. We should take it into practice. And I think it's worth saying it's not only generative AI, it's machine learning in general, which gets us to the next trend that we see on the market, which is regulation and governance. Obviously, generative AI has promoted a lot the awareness in the overall community and the ecosystem about the risk of AI. But even when talking about more traditional, classification models or recommender systems, these models might be prone to some unintentional biases or maybe some unintentional consequences. And we see more and more companies that are actually starting new initiatives, focusing about the responsible aspect of AI as well as the ethical aspects of AI. A new coin that was termed by Gartner is AI TRISM, AI Trust, Risk, and Security Management. So how do we manage and maintain the risk of AI from the very early stages of data collection, preparing and experimenting with different models throughout production and as our models are making decisions in production. So we see more and more companies dealing with that, and especially regulators, whether it's in Europe or in the US, we definitely see the regulation of AI accelerating in a very fast pace. And I wouldn't be surprised if in the next 2 or even 3 years, we'll see a similar regulation to GDPR, just in terms of AI coming to practice and affecting all of us for the better. So going a bit more technical here, as we see more and more companies going to production with their machine learning models, there became a more obvious need for proper infrastructure. So if we look on the developer world space, right, somewhere in 2012, 2013, you might ask people, you might tell people that you have DevOps people in your company, and they would ask you like, what is DevOps? Like, why do you need DevOps? Isn't it just, what developers are doing? And I think this maturity today, no one would be surprised that you have DevOps, and actually quite the opposite. They would ask like, how come you don't DevOps? How come you don't have a proper infrastructure for your developers, right? So with the same, we see the same trend with machine learning, and we see that really in the last 2 and 3 years, there started to be much more focus on MLOps. I think an interesting number, and this is just, it's not from any external survey or something like that, just we are tracking the amount of ML engineers in the US over LinkedIn. And I think it's quite interesting to see that in January 2022, there were about 9,000. And then only 6-7 months later, there were 12,000. And today, if you'll search LinkedIn for ML engineers in the US, you'll find there are about 15,000 ML engineers. So we see this rapid growth in this new title, in this new position. And why is it happening? I think the need is very, very clear for proper infrastructure. That's one. And number two, we see that the large technology vendors, such as Spotify, such as Airbnb and Netflix, have built their own internal ML platforms. And that's actually what's the ML platform. The ML platform essentially is the core infrastructure for facilitating the entire ML lifecycle, from collecting data in a data lake warehouse to making it in a centralized place like a feature store, tracking the experiment, then registering all the trained model, deploying and serving them. And once they are in production, making sure we have the proper visibility, alerting capabilities, as well as we are able to gain insights from production so we can learn and improve our models. So having this entire cycle and making sure it is seamless to the data scientists so they can focus on building models and improving them became very, very important. And not only that, we see that actually today, usually a lot of ML engineers, when you ask them what are their goals, like what are they being tasked with, they would be tasked with building the organizational internal ML platform. Now, obviously, not every company is Uber or Netflix with tons of engineers. And that's what, when we see these companies that are actually choosing best of breed solution, like for feature store or model observability or experiments management. And their role is really to tie up the different pieces of the puzzle in order to create a full cycle, a full pipeline that will be seamless. And we see it as a key in organizations that are successful in deploying models to production and making impact for the business. Digging a layer deeper into that, what we see is that also when it comes to inference data, in the past, some data science teams, some ML platform teams wouldn't actually focus very much about what to do with the production data. Like you would make an inference, whether real time or batch, and you wouldn't necessarily save that data. If that's a batch, it will probably be saved in the notebook, but otherwise it won't be saved in some centralized place. And as we see the growth in adoption for data lake or data warehouse, specifically Databricks and Snowflake becomes very, very clear, very, very emerging, but they're not the only ones. And we see data science and ML teams really focusing on storing their production data. Why? Because they understand it's precious data. With that data, they're able to retrain their models, improve their models. Also, we talked about regulation and compliance. The need for auditing becomes important, as well as when something goes off in production or when a business stakeholder or product manager asks, wait, what happened and why did we make these predictions? Having a centralized store for all this data becomes invaluable to be able to go and investigate what really went on. Now, in addition to these kind of more functional needs and requirements, and some additional benefits that are being gained by having this centralized inference store is having one single source of truth. So instead of having, multiple files, I'm sure all of us had this kind of tendency of having final, or really, really final. So suddenly you have one single source of truth. You can go to this data lake or warehouse and see exactly what happened in production. Additional advantage is once you have this place, it becomes very, very easy to integrate with an observability solution or with a feature store. So talking about the ML platform, it also makes it much, much more easier to accelerate the velocity of building the organizational ML platform. And the one last point that I want to talk about is really that we see AI meets ROI. So I think that a lot of companies in the past 5 years have been investing a lot of money and a lot of budget in data science teams, in collecting data science tools. And sometimes there was some kind of a disconnect between the research and the business stakeholders, which obviously could create frustration for both ends. And I'm very happy to see that in the last year, and we see this trend very, very strongly, we see that there is starting to be much better communication and easier way to communicate between what data science is doing, why the work of the data scientist of these models is so important, is so valuable for the business. We see it more and more getting communicated to the business stakeholders, whether it's in live dashboards or some PDF reports or some more basic Excel sheet. But this is really, really crucial for having success in AI, making sure that the business stakeholders understand what's in it for them and why was it worth the investment in AI in the first place. So thank you very much. I hope it was interesting. I would like to wish all of us a great, fun, and valuable conference.